Hi everyone, this is Harshit Bhardwaj to yet another episode of the Gist of It podcast. Today I have a fantastic guest from Wimbledon, England, Sean Alexander. Hi Sean, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you very much for having me on. And I think this is my first ever podcast done in India. So I'm very grateful.
Yeah, as I just told you, the first thing that caught my attention when I looked at your profile was the book titled "Sober on a Drunk Planet." Is that right? That came out a few months ago.
Yes. Yep. So it came out 2 months ago. And it is very much my perception of life. I used to be drunk a lot. I used to do a lot of drugs. But now I've been sober for 4.5 years. You start to see the world in a different light. So alcohol in the UK is very much intrinsic within everything. I mean, funerals, weddings, holidays, everything and anything we do is celebrated or commiserated with alcohol.
Lots of reasons,
There's
yes. Lots of reasons,
yeah,
plenty. The
yeah,
reason
and that's
Sean, I lived in the UK and I understand the culture there, but it's not specific to any culture or country. I've been back in India for 10 years and I became an alcoholic while back in India. So when I was in the UK, I was just enjoying my pint of lager. That's it. So when did you realize that it's a point where you must decide to stop or it'll be too late? What was the trigger?
so essentially I used to have quite a bit of money. I used to work in finance. I was on the outside. I was successful. I had the nice house, the nice car,
Yeah.
a good job. But it was essentially when I lost all my money, I was still in full-time employment. So I was still getting a monthly salary, but I spent all of that and I spent all my savings, all my previous house sale money.
Wow.
And that was the real trigger when I was sort of faced with being homeless when I was in a full-time job earning a good salary. I mean, it was very surreal, but that is where my addiction was. And for me, losing everything, all the material possessions, was the trigger that I needed to get into rehab.
Hmm. It is still incredible. As I said, I don't know many people who could quit, and it's a big problem in India. Huge problem in India. It's like I don't know, 75-80% of young people between the age of 25, 45, they drink every night, right? It's that big, and it's not just beer. It's proper whiskey. So when I did it for I didn't do it for a long time. I did it probably for 5 years, and my son was 4.5, and I don't remember those 5-6 years. That's how bad it was. So that's the trigger for me. That one fine day, I just realized that my children have grown up, and I haven't spent a single evening in last 6 years with them, and that's how I quit. So you've written a book about it. Just tell me what's in the book. What's the message that you're giving to other people? How can you inspire others to quit?
Yeah, so it's not really a story about my own recovery because if I'm being honest, I'm sort of a bit bored by quit literature that talks about people's memoirs. It's more about all the stuff that I'd learned in recovery,
Yeah.
regurgitated into a short form book. So there's lots of life lessons in there from all the various books. I did a lot of reading when I came out of rehab, and a lot of, I don't know, inner work to some extent. I had counselling and therapy as part of it, and that opened my eyes up to all the things that I thought I knew. But you sort of have to unlearn and go through a reconditioning process when you're sober, because I hadn't had. Well, I didn't want to go back to drinking or drugging again because it led me to such a desperate place. So the book really is looking at the benefits of giving up alcohol. So it's for people that are sort of questioning whether alcohol's a negative or a positive impact in their life. They're going to read the book, and it's the start of a journey. It's to try and kickstart that seed to think, oh, you know what, maybe I should go sober. These are all the benefits of going sober. Tony Robbins calls it leverage. Leverage is really important. Until you've got enough reasons to want to change a behaviour, you're not going to do it. So the book is just trying to motivate and promote all the benefits of sobriety, and it looks at the sort of 8 areas that in life coaches have this thing called a life coach wheel. So it's quite useful from a practical element in that you'll say, right, a score out of 1 out of 10 for relationships, 1 out of 10 for work, and then you can map this diagram. So the book goes through each of those areas. So you could say at the beginning, right, this is where I feel like I am, and then you could do another one in 6 months' time and say, well, since I've been sober, all these things have improved. And inevitably, you speak to other people that have got sober. You look at sober communities. There's quite a big community on Instagram. There's loads of commonalities in terms of people getting sober. Their work improves, their relationships improve, they have more money. I mean, like the list of benefits of sobriety are endless.
Yeah, but I think the biggest challenge is that everyone in theory knows that it's bad and we're losing everything. The impact on relationship, finance, health. Everyone who's a drinker knows that. How do you get someone to see what's going to happen when you're sober? I think that's the challenge, isn't it? I mean, when I was drinking, I knew all this, but I didn't know what's going to happen when I'll be sober for, let's say, 6 months, 3 months. Let's not talk about the actual chemical addiction that pushes you to have a drink or use whatever drugs. It's the psychological impact that why should I, what am I going to get? I feel good when I have a drink. So what special am I going to get when I'm staying sober? That you only know when you stay sober for a while. That's the only way, isn't it? How do you get people to see that, visualize that future, sober future? Of course, you can show your example as that my life is an example. That's what you can showcase. That's what you're doing.
Yeah, so I don't tend to revert to myself too much because it's not trying to be a preachy book. Yeah. It's trying to be a book of commonality that you see in sober communities. So it's not just my story. It's a whole host of people at different variations on the spectrum. So you've got people that have lost everything, whereas you've got other people that have suffered from the anxiety and the mental health issues of alcohol who might not have lost everything. So you don't have to be a full-on addict to appreciate the benefits. And then the book talks in the future. So it's saying, look, this is what you'll get back when you get sober. So it's trying to say, look, this is where you might be at the minute, but this is where you can potentially get, like millions of other people that have got sober, just to give them the motivation to want to see it. Because I think it's quite difficult, like you said, when you're in it, when you're in that constant cycle of drinking every night, it's really difficult to get out of it. And if you've got friendship groups that are all the same, family that are the same, then you're just doing the same things that you see other people do, and it becomes normalized.
It becomes a normal, and you lose friends, don't you, when you quit? All those people, yes. All the friends are gone.
And to be honest, it sounds like a negative thing, but it's not. Like, people through ages go through cycles of friends. I think when we get older, it feels like you don't want to lose friends because you shouldn't be seen as, I'm 36 years old now, so my friendship circle is very small. I see the quality in that, but other people on the outside might think, oh, he's a bit of a loner, he hasn't got much of a life. I actually prefer that. And it's not to say, like, all the guys that I sort of said to, look, I can't be friends with you anymore because it reminds me too much of my past. They're not horrible people. They just do what they do, and that's fine. I've moved on. And it's quite difficult, but when you get past 30, to think I'm going to try and find a new set of friends. But actually, I've gained a lot more from doing that and sort of letting go of that past self, and it's allowed me to move on a lot quicker.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're absolutely right. When past 30, all the friends I have now, I'm 42. All the friends I have, they are school friends or college friends. So I I haven't managed to make any new real good friendships since then. So it's difficult. So all those booze buddies, they drift off, and which is a good thing. They stop
Yeah,
picking your phone when you're sober.
yeah. Like the invites dry up pretty quick. And I don't know, some people say, oh, it's because you're a bit of a threat to their drinking habits. They might feel a sense of unease because I'm not drinking, and it doesn't allow them to carry on doing the same things that we used to do together.
Yeah.
So I guess to some extent, it's a bit of a self reflection like, oh, I don't drink anymore. I don't do drugs anymore. So now if you go and do those while I'm here, I'm going to know.
Ah, ah,
And to be honest, part of that played on my head a lot when I was going. I was still trying to go out with the same group of friends when I got sober. So it works both ways. And I think you just get to a point where the friends that don't mind matter and the friends that mind don't matter. I think I've got that the wrong way around. But
yeah, the other way around.
it's essentially, yeah, essentially, if they don't mind that you're sober and you're not going to drink and they still want to spend time with you, then
Yeah.
that's fine. And they respect they're not going to drink excessively and they're not going to do drugs behind your back, then that's fine. Like that's what I want and that's what they want, and we still remain friends. There's just not as many of them.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. That's the right way. I still, but one realization that I would like to share, I'm sure you must have experienced it, is now when you sit with people drinking around you, after 15, 20 minutes, for 20 minutes, 25 minutes, it's all good. You enjoy their jokes. But as the booze starts to go in, it starts, for me, it starts to become very, very annoying and frustrating. And, I find them really, really, I can't tolerate more than half an hour. And then I think that I used to be like them, probably worse. Every time I spend time with them, this is what I feel, that I used to be worse. And I feel bad, but then I feel good. Have you ever
Yeah, and
experienced that?
that's exactly the same for me. Like my other half, she's 3.5 years sober as well. And she says exactly the same thing. Like we both went to my family's, we had like a joint birthday thing. They're Italians, so by nature they enjoy wine.
Yeah.
But after we'd been sat at the table and they'd been drinking wine, like after about 20 minutes, they're all starting to change in how they talk and they're getting louder.
Yeah.
And we just made our excuses and left because we started to feel a bit uncomfortable. But like you said, I used to be the worst person at the table when I used to drink. And now I can't stand people like that.
That's that. Every time I feel, I think bad about them, I feel I used to be worse. Man, I used to be worse. So thank God, or thank whosoever. So it's a good exit. It's a good exit out. And I really want, I tell my friends to quit, because they tell me that you taught us to drink. And I tell them now I'm asking you to quit, but they can't. So far, I haven't found a way to convince people. So I'm gonna read the book, and I'll probably find some ways to pass it on to people. It's amazing.
tend, tend to find that I think alcohol's just like a band-aid for covering up a deeper problem. So for me, a lot of the work that went on for me getting sober was understanding why I was drinking and drugging so much. So I think sometimes it's a case of people need to talk about things that make them uncomfortable, because ultimately that's why they're drinking and drugging. It might not be a conscious thing. Like for me, the subconscious reasons why I drink and drug was so subconscious, I didn't really know myself until I started speaking to a counsellor. And that's why I retrained as a counsellor, because I think it's such an important thing to be able to talk to people openly and honestly without fear of being criticised
Yeah.
about how you feel, and then doing that work with the counsellor who's trained to then work out why you drink and drug in the first place. Because then when you realise that, you can then do everything else you need to do in order to feel better, and then you don't need to then drink or drug.
Yeah, you don't need that. Yeah. So have you found writing to be very therapeutic, to where you can express without a fear of judgment? At least when you're writing and not thinking about publishing and sending it out to the world, when you're just writing, because I'm an author and I absolutely love the whole process of writing. So did you start writing after you quit, or you always wrote?
Yeah, so strangely enough, I was my brain cells got quite heavily impacted by all the drink and drugs I did. So I actually struggled. I felt like I was almost dyslexic when I came out of rehab. But then about 4 years in, I listened to a lot of audibles. So I think you've got Audible in India as well,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
where I'm an auditory learner, so I can listen and I take information in a lot better than reading a book. So my motivation was always to launch a series on Audible that helps people, because I've read thousands, I've listened to thousands of hours of Audible books, all sort of self-help
Mm,
biographies, because I needed to find inspiration to
mm,
help me stay sober and to find interests in other things other than what I used to do in my past life. So yeah, I just thought, you know what, let's do something I'm passionate about, put all this knowledge that I've learned and put into practice into some sort of self-help
mm.
series
Ah,
that can help people through the various stages of sobriety. So
mm,
the first book, Sober on a Drunk Planet, is the name of the book series. Giving Up Alcohol is really the first stage of it. So the first stage is seeing whether you need to give up or you want to give up. And then it will move into other aspects of it. So in theory, I'll trying to do a bit of branding with it, in that people will go to Sober on a Drunk Planet as being the go-to thing that can guide people to a better life in sobriety. Now, I'm very much on this journey still. I'm 4.5 years, but I'm always willing to learn and admit when I'm wrong, because I'm human at the end of the day. I'm not perfect, and the self-help books aren't meant to be a, oh, this is me, do all the things that I've done, because I inevitably still get stuff wrong as well.
mm, mm, mm. Yeah, you mentioned that there are always deeper reasons to why someone goes to drugs or alcohol. And in my life, I found myself, when I started thinking about bettering myself, developing myself, growing myself, that was probably the subconscious trigger for me to get out of alcoholism. And I think self-help or making someone the better version of themselves, that's probably your core overall overarching idea, isn't it? Physically you're doing it, you're making people fitter, but this is where you're moving, isn't it? Making people the better versions, best versions of themselves, better every day, mentally, physically, emotionally, psychologically.
Yeah, and I think like the fitness side of it was such a huge part of my own recovery, because part of the reasons I drank and drug in the first place because I was overweight. So my whole I was bullied at school for things that were just unfortunate, and self-confidence was always an issue, trying to overachieve in everything. So food was my first comfort. My first addiction was food. That then just manifests itself in alcohol and drugs when you get to 18 years old, um, and they're more destructive. I think food addiction is very common, especially in the UK and US, where obesity levels are all-time highs, because if you think about it, food is very cheap and it's not, there's no shame or stigma about it. So you can get fast food takeaways, which are horrible, but they do exactly the same thing as having a pint. That pint is taking away how you feel.
Mm,
So does food. So the fitness was important for losing the weight, but then along that whole journey, it's directly correlated with my mental health, my emotional health, to some extent my spiritual health as well. But yeah, the publishing business incorporates all of those elements. It's not just fitness, because it's very much trying to keep mind, body, and soul in balance. Something as an addict that I've never been able to do, and to some extent, I still try and battle with food. But then I seem to do the opposite with exercise. So yeah, there's still some sort of addictive natures in there as well, but very much on a learning curve. But yeah, all those emotional, mental, physical, financial health as well is important. I'm an ex-investment consultant, so I did a lot when I worked in the city in London for 12 years, sort of giving advice to other people and their money, albeit I was drinking and drugging and wasting all my money and going bankrupt in the background. So it's quite strange that you can have this knowledge but then not use it.
The typical Wall Street life. Yeah,
Yeah, to some extent.
Mr. Belfort's. Well, I share you an experience that I have. Whenever I go for a run, and I'm not a big fan of running, whenever I go for a run occasionally, I normally smoke. So the days I go for a run, I don't feel like smoking at all. It just, I don't know whether I feel guilty. I ran for an hour and now I'm gonna smoke in the bad things that the body, the mind doesn't allow. So whenever I do a workout in the gym, I don't feel like smoking. And the days I don't, I do. So there is definitely a correlation between trying to look after yourself and then the bad things probably drift off. So I don't know how that works. Probably I'll find out in your book and more of your sessions.
Yeah,
Amazing.
It's definitely a self-fulfilling prophecy. I think the fitter you get, the healthier you are. But modern day, there's so many bad things that are easily accessible out there. It just becomes more and more difficult.
Exactly. We'll keep in touch because I'm really excited to be part of your publishing and promotional and all those wonderful ideas that you have that you're executing. And the book is not available in India. We'll try and find out how we can make it available in India. And anything
I think it is available in India.
It
is
is
it not?
No, it's not.
Oh,
It's available as an import by Amazon, so that like increases the price 5 times, 8 times.
okay.
So those who we recently published a London author in India published the book locally so that the pricing is controlled by us, not Amazon. So we can sort that out. Yeah, that's what a lot of people do. And self-help books, a huge market. It's huge. 75% of the population speaks English. And ironically, English is the second language, but more books sell in English than any other language. I could never figure that out. Why that happens. And the Bollywood is in Hindi. The film industry is in Hindi. So people like to watch in Hindi, but they like to read in English. How's that working? I have no idea. So it's pretty interesting mix. It was amazing to talk to you, Sean, and we'll keep in touch. And hopefully we'll have an update in a few months' time of the stuff you're doing together. And thanks a lot for your time. I'll switch off the recording.
Brilliant. Thank you for having me on.
Thanks a lot for your time.